So, like, if you were trying to navigate downtown traffic today, you obviously wouldn't pull out some crumbling 2,000-year-old parchment map from the Roman Empire.
Right. I mean, that would be completely useless.
Exactly. We treat ancient texts like, historical artifacts. They're beautiful behind glass, but totally useless for finding your way through a messy modern Wednesday.
Yeah, that's the standard assumption, for sure.
But reading through the personal journals and the scripture study notes on the desk for today's deep dive, it completely shatters that assumption. Suddenly, an ancient map isn't just relevant. It's practically glowing with real-time GPS coordinates.
It really is. We are looking at a deeply intimate, just unfiltered collection of private testimonies and daily reflections today.
And it's fascinating because of how they use the text, right?
Yeah, what makes this archive so compelling is the author's utter refusal to treat biblical narrative as distant history. For the individual who wrote these notes, ancient texts are a living, breathing somatic for surviving the modern world.
So our mission today is to explore exactly how this individual uses these ancient narratives, specifically the life of the Apostle Paul and deeply embedded Old Testament politics.
Right, using them as a direct lens for navigating their own life.
Okay, let's unpack this,
Yeah.
because we are covering a massive spectrum today.
Oh, totally. It's a really wide range.
We're dissecting the systemic, lethal injustices of the ancient Roman Empire, the psychological warfare of a concrete front porch renovation, and the mechanics of surviving a bitter betrayal by a trusted friend.
Which is quite the lineup, and the foundational anchor point that sets the psychological tone for the entire journal begins with Acts chapter 22.
The story of Paul.
Right, we are looking at the Apostle Paul, but the focus isn't on the standard Sunday school version of the Damascus Road. The text zeroes in on Paul's identity as an, quote, ardent wrongdoer.
An ardent wrongdoer, that's a strong phrase.
It is, and his own admission in 1 Corinthians 15 that he was, born out of due time.
Because Paul was the ultimate insider threat, right? Like, he wasn't just a skeptic. He was actively hunting down early Christians.
Yeah, he carried the legal authority to literally consent to their executions. He was the enforcer for the religious establishment.
Right. So to put this in modern terms for the listener, if you're building a championship sports franchise, you don't go to the opposing team and hire their most volatile, aggressive player.
No, you definitely don't.
Like the guy who has made a career out of injuring your roster, and suddenly you just, hand him the captain's jersey.
Right. I mean, it defies conventional logic entirely.
Exactly. But let's push that sports analogy further. Maybe you hire the opposing team's enforcer because he understands the very machinery he used to break the rules.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
He knows the system's flaws from the inside out. So I have to ask, is that the mechanism at play here? Why choose someone capable of such great forwardness, as the text puts it, instead of a candidate with a clean record?
Well, the journals draw a distinct theological conclusion about that mechanism, and it actually has nothing to do with Paul's insider knowledge or personal utility.
Oh, really? So it's not about his skills?
Not at all. It is entirely about demonstrating absolute, unquestionable jurisdiction. The author notes that if you choose the most ardent wrongdoer, the person furthest away from the redemptive work, you establish that your power to transform is absolute.
Okay, wow. That makes sense.
Yeah, the author writes that it is about proving, quote, God is in his power and foreknowledge. There's no baseline of merit required.
Which means there is no human being beyond reach.
Exactly.
And the leap from ancient theology to modern application here is just fascinating. The author doesn't leave that concept stuck in the first century.
No, they apply it directly to local municipal government, which I found so interesting.
Right. The notes document the author actively praying for recent city contractors and a local commissioner, asking that these secular bureaucrats might be entirely converted.
It completely flips the psychological script. When you internalize the idea that an ardent wrongdoer like Paul can be flipped into a chief advocate, you stop viewing hostile bureaucrats or, unyielding authority figures as immovable concrete walls.
Right. They become dormant assets. They're simply candidates for a paradigm shift.
Exactly. But the author isn't naive about how authority actually functions in the real world.
No. Definitely not, because an internal spiritual shift doesn't instantly dismantle an external political reality.
Right, and this leads right into a terrifying legal loophole the author studies closely regarding Paul's run-in with a Roman centurion.
This is in Acts 22, right?
Yes. A riot breaks out in Jerusalem. The Roman chief captain decides to just bypass the judicial process entirely and commands that Paul be interrogated by scourging.
And as a listener, if you're familiar with the text, scourging wasn't just a severe whipping. It was a lethal, flesh-tearing punishment designed to bring a victim to the absolute brink of death.
It was brutal. So they have Paul bound, the tools are out, the beating is about to begin, and Paul plays his trump card.
He drops a total bombshell.
Yeah.
He asks the centurion, "Is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned?"
And the legal machinery just grinds to an absolute halt. The chief captain is terrified because scourging an uncondemned Roman citizen was a massive violation of imperial law.
Like it could cost a commanding officer his own life, right?
Exactly. So Paul is immediately released from his bindings.
And often, this is taught as a triumphant moment of divine deliverance. Like Paul outsmarts the system.
Yeah, that's the usual takeaway.
But reading the author's analysis of this event, the tone isn't victorious at all. It's incredibly dark.
Very dark.
Because the unspoken reality hanging in the air is that if Paul had only been perceived as Jewish, if he didn't possess that specific piece of imperial political capital, the brutal, unjust beating would have proceeded.
Without question. And no one in the Roman hierarchy would have lost a second of sleep over it. The system functioned perfectly.
It was entirely comfortable with unspeakable brutality, provided that brutality was directed at the designated demographic.
Right, and the journals wrestle heavily with this. The author connects Paul's two-tiered justice system to a deeply unsettling Old Testament narrative in 2 Samuel 18.
To identify a continuous timeline of, quote, long-existing injustices and social inequities.
Exactly.
So this is the story of Joab and the messengers, right? Walk me through the actual political math Joab is doing in that moment, because I think it's chilling.
It really is. So King David's son, Absalom, has just been killed in battle. Joab, the military commander, needs to send a runner to deliver this news to David.
And historically, delivering the news of a royal son's death to a grieving, volatile king is basically a suicide mission.
Oh, 100%. The king might just execute the messenger in a fit of rage. So Joab has two potential messengers standing in front of him.
Okay, who are they?
One is Ahimaaz. He's a prominent Israelite, the son of the high priest. He possesses significant social and political capital.
Right.
The other is Cushi, a Nubian foreigner serving in the ranks.
So Joab is looking at a high-status insider and a low-status foreigner, knowing one of them might be killed by the king within the hour.
Precisely. Joab makes a calculated actuarial decision regarding human worth. He deems the life of Ahimaaz too valuable to risk.
And he deems the life of Cushi, the foreigner, entirely expendable.
Right. So he orders Cushi to deliver the news. The author of our notes bridges these two texts, the Roman centurion and the Israelite commander, to point out that systemic prejudice is an ancient, enduring pathology.
Wow. Yeah, whether it's the empire deciding who gets a trial based on citizenship or a general deciding who gets a suicide mission based on ethnicity.
Human value is constantly, unjustly manipulated by power structures. The author makes that very clear.
When you realize the deck is that systematically stacked against you, the natural human instinct is to dig your heels in.
Oh, absolutely.
You want to fight the system directly, expose the bias, and just go to war. But the strategy mapped out in these journals goes in the exact opposite direction.
It does. The recurring tactic identified in the text is what the author terms timely withdrawal.
Timely withdrawal.
Right. The observation is that stepping away, rather than engaging in a frontal assault, is frequently the primary mechanism for advancing a mission.
I struggle with this concept. I really do. Because in a modern context, timely withdrawal sounds suspiciously like a convenient, highly spiritualized rationalization for conflict avoidance.
I can see why you'd think that.
Right. Like, how is this not just cowardice disguised as theology? If the system is unjust, running away feels like surrender.
It looks like surrender if you don't understand the broader board. Think about it like a high-level chess match.
Okay, I'm tracking.
If your knight is under heavy attack, moving it backward looks like a retreat to a novice. But a grandmaster knows that the knight isn't fleeing fearfully.
It's repositioning.
Exactly. It is repositioning to a specific square that will dictate a checkmate 3 moves later.
Oh, I like that.
The author synthesizes this difference beautifully, noting that biblical withdrawal is never about avoidance. It is the, quote, strategic movement of God guiding his servants to their appointed assignments.
Which explains the examples they pull.
Yeah.
Like Jacob fleeing his father-in-law Laban's intensifying hostility before it erupts.
Right, or Jesus intentionally leaving Judea for Samaria when religious factions tried to provoke a turf war between his followers and John the Baptist's followers.
Or Paul being repeatedly redirected away from angry, contentious crowds to go preach to the Gentiles.
They aren't running away from the mission, they're running toward it. Getting bogged down in fruitless conflict drains the finite energy required for your actual purpose.
So it's about preserving your energy?
Yes, the discipline is in recognizing that you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to.
That's incredibly practical. But if systemic injustice requires the grand strategy of timely withdrawal, how does that same theology scale down when the stakes are incredibly mundane?
What do you mean?
Well, because the author takes this massive concept of surrendering control and applies it to the psychological warfare of fixing a concrete front porch.
Oh, yes. The shift in the journal entries here is deeply relatable.
We move from the lethal politics of ancient Rome to a massive list of domestic renovations.
Yeah, achieved by faith, as they note. A new front porch, painted interiors, scraped windows, new gutters, a tuned-up furnace with a warranty, pulled-up carpet.
There's even a highly celebrated note about an unexpected email from People's Gas,
Oh, right, confirming an auto-pay cancellation with the message, "You're all paid up."
which honestly is a modern miracle in itself.
Seriously. But the cement base for this new front porch becomes a profound source of anxiety for the author.
It induces total decision fatigue.
It really does. The author loved the original circular layout of the porch. But when it comes time to pour the new concrete, they're hit with an avalanche of conflicting, highly pragmatic advice.
Right, so they consult an AI program to calculate the optimal layout. And the algorithm suggests extending the concrete over the grassy opening to fortify the structure.
And the author's sister agrees with the algorithm.
Even two trusted members of the local congregation agree.
Yeah, the two faithful saints. And the city workers agree too.
Every external voice, human and artificial, is telling the author to build it the practical way. But the author's internal intuition dreads how that extension will actually look.
It's the ultimate clash between algorithmically optimized pragmatism and human aesthetic intuition.
So how do they break the paralysis?
Well, by exercising the exact same muscle of strategic withdrawal we just discussed. They write, "Here I am again, Lord. Finally I knew, trust God with I. Let it go."
Wow, so the breakthrough isn't a design revelation, it's a realization regarding the nature of control.
Exactly. The author anchors onto a scriptural promise that God would, quote, glorify the place of his feet.
So they realize the renovation isn't actually about their own property value or, personal comfort.
No, it's about building a physical environment that reflects divine glory to the neighborhood.
If Christ gets glory out of doing the front porch first, then why wouldn't I?
Right. And by relinquishing the need to micromanage the cement footprint, the author effectively tells the algorithm, the contractors, and their own anxiety that this patch of concrete is no longer their burden to carry.
It's a vital practice ground.
Yeah.
If you cannot surrender control over a porch layout, you possess zero psychological framework for surviving a true life crisis.
Exactly. And the journals detail that once that control is surrendered, the environment itself seems to respond.
Oh yeah, the signs. The author begins interpreting incredibly intimate signs of reassurance.
Like waking up in distress in the middle of the night, only to find the number 317 blinking steadily on an unset stove clock.
Which provided an inexplicable sense of comfort.
I did.
Or the bizarre visual phenomena recorded a few weeks later. This part was wild. The sun piercing through the clouds, flooding the living room, and then suddenly shifting into a deep purple-tinged blood-red hue.
Right. The author steps onto the newly finished porch, checking to see if the blinds are distorting the light, but the sky itself stays red and then shifts toward orange.
It's alarming at first, but then a sudden break of crystal blue sky opens, and bright sunlight pours directly into the front hall.
And the author records this not as a mere meteorological event, but as God utilizing his own creation to communicate directly with their psychological state.
It is a profound integration of the divine and the domestic. The light piercing the hall is interpreted as a direct answer to prayer, specifically regarding a brother who offered to help with handyman trim repairs.
They are building a physical sanctuary,
Yeah.
but the tragedy documented in the subsequent pages is that while the physical house is being beautifully fortified, the relational sanctuary completely burns down.
Yeah, the tonal shift in the writing here is severe.
It really is. The joy of the renovation is replaced by the deep disorientation of spiritual sabotage from inside the camp.
Friendly fire. The text reveals that a trusted minister, someone the author confided in, took crucial, private struggles the author had shared and weaponized them.
The minister repeated these private confessions over the pulpit in a twisted, recognizable way to the congregation.
The breach of trust is just devastating. And looking back, the author recognizes the internal warning system that was firing off prior to the betrayal.
Right. They document receiving internal prompts like, hold onto your hat and buckle your seatbelt.
A very direct command to just shut your mouth.
Yeah. The atmosphere of the church becomes completely toxic after that. There's a deeply unsettling detail where the author recounts a Sunday sermon targeting a, quote, pretty little senior thing.
Yeah, warning that despite modest dressing, this person was being pulled into total darkness.
The author recognizes these as bait-type statements, rhetoric designed specifically by the enemy to weaken their faith and induce paranoia.
So the community that is explicitly commanded by Scripture to model humble service has basically become a minefield of judgment and exposure.
Sadly, yes.
So how does a person survive that? When the betrayal isn't an ancient Roman Empire passing laws against you, but a trusted spiritual leader twisting your pain into a sermon illustration.
It's a heavy question.
Like, how do you avoid completely collapsing into cynicism?
You survive it by turning back to the ancient blueprint. In the aftermath of the pulpit betrayal, the author anchors into 1 Samuel chapter 30.
The story of David at Ziklag.
Exactly. David and his men return from a military campaign to find their home city raided, burned to the foundation, and their families taken captive.
The psychological devastation there is absolute. The text notes that David's men weep until they physically do not have the power to weep anymore.
And then the grief turns into blame. The very men David has led and protected begin speaking of stoning him. He is entirely isolated.
The ultimate betrayal by your own inner circle.
Yet David does not spiral into cynicism. The scripture says he encouraged himself in the Lord his God. He asks the divine, "Shall I pursue?"
And the response he receives is, "Pursue. For thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail recover all."
And the author absorbs this ancient exchange and overlays it perfectly onto their current heartbreak. They ask themselves the brutal question, is there a burning of Ziklag ahead?
And they don't flinch. They answer,
Yeah.
yes. The community is fracturing, the pain is real, the fire has happened.
But they do not let the fire dictate the final word. They boldly declare in their notes, "I believe that you will recover it all, and I shall recover all also."
Wow, it is a stunning display of emotional and spiritual reclamation. They refuse to grant the betrayer the power to permanently destroy their peace.
It really is an incredible testament to their resilience.
Looking at the entirety of what we've unpacked today, it's incredible how cohesive this timeline is. We watch the ultimate insider threat, Paul, get flipped to prove that no authority figure is beyond reach.
We analyze the lethal, calculated ethnic math of an ancient empire.
And learn that retreating from a rigged game isn't cowardice. It's a grandmaster strategy to preserve energy for the true assignment. We saw the psychological burden of decision fatigue surrendered on a concrete front porch, preparing the author to survive the ultimate burning of Ziklag when a trusted confidant weaponized their pain.
The journals prove that these texts are not artifacts. They are highly functional tools for diagnosing and surviving the human condition.
Totally.
And to synthesize this entire journey, I want to direct your attention to two specific verses the author kept prominently featured in their verses of the day.
Okay, what were they?
Galatians 5, verse 1 and 5, verse 13.
These verses state that it is for freedom that Christ has set us free.
But they contain a vital restriction. They command the reader not to use that freedom to indulge the flesh, but rather to use it to serve one another humbly in love.
Think about the absolute paradox of that command.
It's challenging.
If ultimate freedom isn't about the power to do whatever we want, or the leverage to win the argument against the AI algorithm, or the ability to crush the minister who betrayed you from the pulpit, if true freedom is actually defined as possessing the deep, unshakable internal security required to humbly serve the very people who might judge your worth based on your background, how does that redefine the battles you choose to fight tomorrow?
It changes everything.
The next time you find yourself staring down a modern intersection, totally paralyzed by decision fatigue or relational betrayal, maybe the most practical thing you can do is pull out that crumbling ancient map. It might just give you the exact coordinates you need to recover it all.